Dr. Aisha Mitchell stood in the bustling research lab, her heart racing with anticipation as she prepared to present her groundbreaking findings on renewable energy sources. The lab was a hive of activity, filled with the whirring of machines and the low murmur of her colleagues discussing their own projects. Aisha, an African-American scientist with a brilliant mind, had dedicated countless hours to her research, and today she was determined to share her insights with her team. Gathering her notes, she cleared her throat, capturing the attention of her colleagues, who were predominantly white and male. Among them was Dr. Thomas Blake, the lead researcher, known for his blunt demeanor and sharp critique. Aisha smiled, feeling a spark of hope. "Thank you all for gathering today," she began, her voice steady and confident. "I'm excited to share my latest findings on solar energy efficiency and how we can leverage this to create more sustainable solutions." As she spoke, Aisha's passion for her work shone through. She detailed her innovative approach to increasing solar panel efficiency, her eyes lighting up with enthusiasm. However, as she glanced around the room, she noticed the indifferent expressions on her colleagues' faces. Dr. Blake leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, while others busily scrolled through their phones or whispered among themselves. When she finished, there was a brief silence before Dr. Blake chimed in. "Interesting, Aisha, but you know the market is flooded with solar technologies already. What makes yours different?" His tone was condescending, and Aisha felt a flush of frustration rise within her. She had anticipated some skepticism, but the dismissive attitude stung more than she expected. "Actually, Dr. Blake," Aisha replied, her voice firm despite her rising irritation. "The algorithm I developed can optimize the energy conversion rates significantly, which could set our research apart from existing technologies. It's about increasing efficiency without additional costs." Dr. Blake waved his hand dismissively. "We'll see. I think we should focus on more traditional avenues. This sounds too experimental." The room filled with murmurs of agreement, and Aisha's heart sank. She had poured her soul into this research, and here it was being tossed aside like a mere nuisance. After the meeting, Aisha felt a wave of disappointment wash over her. She retreated to her small office, her sanctuary amidst the chaos of the lab. Frustrated, she sank into her chair, staring at the scattered papers that chronicled her work. It was hard to shake the feeling of invisibility that had followed her throughout her career. She picked up her phone and texted her best friend, Dr. Maya Johnson. "Can we talk? I need to vent." Maya responded almost instantly, her support unwavering. "Of course. Meet me at the cafe in 10. Aisha smiled faintly, grateful for Maya's unwavering friendship. They had been through thick and thin, and Maya always knew how to lift her spirits. At the cafe, Aisha poured her heart out. "Maya, I feel like I'm fighting a losing battle. No one takes me seriously, and I'm tired of being overlooked. It's like my contributions don't matter just because of who I am." Maya listened intently, her brow furrowed with concern. "Aisha, you're brilliant. Don't let them dim your light. Remember why you started this journey in the first place. You're doing groundbreaking work, and you deserve recognition." "I know, but it's so hard. Every time I present something, it's like I have to fight twice as hard just to get a fraction of the credit," Aisha replied, her voice tinged with frustration. "I don't want to be invisible anymore." Maya reached across the table, squeezing Aisha's hand. "You won't be. Keep pushing forward. Your work is important, and you have to believe in it. Let your passion shine through, and don't let their indifference stop you." Aisha nodded, feeling a flicker of determination spark within her. She knew her journey wouldn't be easy, but Maya's words resonated deeply. She would find a way to make her voice heard. Back in the lab, Aisha sat in the meeting room, a knot forming in her stomach as her colleagues discussed the upcoming project. The conversation flowed around her, her insights seemingly forgotten. She remained silent, her heart heavy with the realization that her contributions were once again being overlooked. As they deliberated on strategies that directly related to her research, a sense of urgency surged within her. She couldn't remain a passive observer any longer. The fight for recognition had only just begun. In the dimly lit research lab, The hum of machinery created an almost rhythmic backdrop as Dr. Aisha Mitchell leaned over her workstation, illuminated by the glow of her computer screen. Her heart raced with anticipation. She had stumbled upon a formula that could significantly enhance the efficiency of solar panels, a breakthrough that could change the landscape of renewable energy. Yet, as the excitement coursed through her, a familiar wave of doubt washed over her. Memories of her colleagues' dismissive remarks echoed in her mind, prompting her to reconsider sharing her discovery. What if they reject it again? She whispered to herself, her fingers hovering above the keyboard. Aisha glanced around the lab, her gaze landing on the empty chairs that usually surrounded her. Chairs that had been filled by the same men who had undermined her contributions. "I can't give them another chance to dismiss me," she muttered, determination hardening her resolve. She decided to work in secret, pouring all her energy into refining her formula. The world outside faded away as she immersed herself in her research, fueled by both hope and the fear of futility. Days turned into late nights, and Aisha found solace in the solitude of the lab. The soft click of her keyboard was the only sound breaking the silence, punctuated occasionally by the rustle of papers and the soft whir of the lab equipment. She meticulously documented every step of her research, her heart swelling with pride whenever she observed the data aligning with her hypotheses. "This is it," she exclaimed softly to herself, her eyes wide with excitement. "This could really change everything." Just as she felt her energy waning, Dr. Thomas Blake's voice echoed through the hall, pulling Aisha from her thoughts. "We have a major conference coming up," he announced, his tone commanding attention. "We need to present our latest findings, and I expect everyone to contribute." Aisha's stomach sank as she listened. She recalled how her previous contributions had been brushed aside. "I bet he'll take credit for my work again," she thought bitterly, her hands clenching into fists. The conference was a golden opportunity, but the thought of her ideas being co-opted without acknowledgement ignited a fire within her. She needed to be prepared. She couldn't let her groundbreaking research slip away unnoticed. In a sudden burst of courage, she decided it was time to confront the reality of her situation. Aisha approached Dr. Blake after the meeting, her heart pounding. "Dr. Blake," she began, trying to keep her voice steady, "I'd like to discuss my recent findings on solar efficiency." He looked at her, eyebrows raised, but the dismissal was evident in his expression. "We'll see what we can incorporate into the presentation," he replied, brushing her off as he turned to leave. Aisha felt a surge of anger rise within her. "He's going to present my work without even mentioning my name," she realized, gritting her teeth. That evening, with a renewed sense of purpose, Aisha remained in the lab long after everyone else had left. The fluorescent lights flickered overhead as she pored over her data, determined to solidify her findings. "This could impact not just our research, but the entire field of renewable energy," she murmured, her ambition rekindling her spirit. As the hours passed, she meticulously crafted a presentation that encapsulated her discovery. "I will present this at the conference," she declared to the empty room, her voice echoing back to her. She visualized the audience's faces, filled with intrigue rather than indifference, and felt the weight of her ambition lift her spirits. "Tomorrow," she whispered, her heart racing with anticipation. "Tomorrow, I'll show them what I'm capable of." The determination surged within her, igniting a fire that would not be extinguished. Aisha knew that whatever obstacles loomed ahead, she was ready to confront them head-on. Her voice would be heard, her presence would be felt, and this time, she would not be silenced. As Aisha meticulously worked through the final stages of her groundbreaking research, she barely noticed the world around her. The hum of machines and the faint sounds of her colleagues chatting in the distance faded into a background noise that she had grown accustomed to. Each data point she analyzed sent a rush of excitement through her, a reminder of the potential impact her findings could have on renewable energy. Just as she was about to dive deeper into her analysis, the door swung open, and in walked Dr. Robert Chun, a name that resonated with respect and admiration in the scientific community. "Dr. Mitchell," he began, a warm smile breaking the tension in the room, "I hope I'm not interrupting. I wanted to talk to you about your recent work." Aisha's heart raced. Dr. Chen had been instrumental in several innovative projects and was known for his ability to recognize potential in emerging scientists. Not at all, Dr. Chen, Aisha replied, her voice steady despite her excitement. I was just finalizing my research on solar panel efficiency. I've been following your progress, he continued, leaning against the doorframe with genuine interest. Your previous contributions were impressive, and I believe there's much more to explore in your latest findings. I'd like to offer my mentorship as you prepare for the upcoming conference. Aisha felt a wave of gratitude wash over her. Here was someone who not only recognized her work, but was willing to invest his time in her success. That would mean a lot to me, Dr. Chen. I've faced some challenges within my team recently, and having your guidance would be invaluable. Dr. Chen nodded, his expression serious. I've seen this happen too often, talented researchers being overlooked. We need to change that narrative. Let's work together to ensure your voice is heard at the conference. As the days passed, Aisha immersed herself in preparation, buoyed by Dr. Chen's mentorship. They met regularly, refining her presentation and discussing strategies to effectively convey her findings. Aisha felt a renewed sense of purpose, but lingering doubts crept in. Would her team support her? Would they recognize the value of her work, especially after the previous dismissals? On the night before the conference, Aisha sat in her lab, her laptop open, displaying the slides she had crafted with Dr. Chen. She replayed her presentation in her mind, rehearsing the key points that would highlight the revolutionary aspects of her research. But her focus shattered when she received an unexpected email from Dr. Blake, her team leader. Subject: conference presentation details. With a sinking feeling, Aisha opened the email. As she read through the contents, her heart raced. Dr. Blake had outlined the team's presentation plan, and to her horror, her name was conspicuously absent. They intended to present her findings without acknowledging her contributions, claiming the work as a collective effort. Aisha clenched her fists, a mixture of anger and disbelief coursing through her. How could they do this? She muttered to herself, feeling a familiar sense of isolation wash over her. The very team she had hoped would support her was planning to erase her contributions. Determined not to let this setback define her, Aisha made a bold decision. She would present her findings independently, regardless of the risks involved. I've worked too hard for this, she said aloud, her voice steady with resolve. She quickly began to prepare her slides, ensuring that each point showcased her research's significance and potential impact. The clock ticked away, and as the hours passed, Aisha felt a mix of fear and exhilaration. She was stepping into uncharted territory, but the thought of being silenced again fueled her determination. This is my moment, she whispered to herself, a fierce determination igniting within her. As she rehearsed her presentation one last time, Aisha envisioned the audience, scientists, industry leaders, and students, eager to hear about her revolutionary discovery. She pictured their faces, the intrigue in their eyes as she explained her findings. In that moment, she felt a surge of confidence that overshadowed her fears. Aisha Mitchell, she practiced, the name rolling off her tongue with newfound strength. I'm here to share a breakthrough that could redefine energy efficiency. Let's change the world together. With that, Aisha closed her laptop, taking a deep breath to steady her nerves. She was ready to break barriers, ready to claim her place in the scientific community, and most importantly, ready to make her voice heard. Aisha took a deep breath as she stepped onto the stage, the bright lights momentarily blinding her. The audience buzzed with anticipation, a sea of faces that ranged from curious to skeptical. She could feel her heart racing, each beat resonating with the gravity of the moment. This was it, the culmination of months of hard work and determination. She gripped the edges of the podium, forcing herself to focus on the presentation slides that flickered to life behind her. Good morning, everyone, she began, her voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions swirling inside her. Today, I'm excited to share with you a groundbreaking development in solar energy efficiency. The words tumbled out, and as she spoke, she could see the audience lean in, their interest piqued. Aisha felt an electric thrill course through her. For the first time, she was capturing their attention. As she delved into the intricacies of her research, detailing the innovative formula she had discovered, Aisha noticed nods of approval from various attendees. She explained the potential impact her findings could have on renewable energy, emphasizing how her approach could revolutionize solar panel efficiency. Imagine a world where solar panels can convert sunlight into energy at unprecedented rates, she proposed, her passion igniting the room. The audience erupted into applause, and Aisha couldn't help but smile, a mix of relief and triumph washing over her. Backstage, however, the mood was drastically different. Dr. Blake paced furiously, his expression twisted in anger. How could she do this? He spat, turning to his team, who were equally furious. We had an agreement. This was supposed to be our project. Calm down, Thomas. One of the researchers, Mark said, trying to placate him. She was never going to let us take credit for her work. This was bound to happen. Dr. Blake's face turned a shade darker. We need to confront her. She's made a mockery of our team. He stormed toward the exit, his colleagues trailing behind, their expressions a mix of concern and anxiety. Aisha, still basking in the positive energy of her presentation, felt a tap on her shoulder. She turned to see Dr. Chun, his eyes sparkling with pride. That was incredible, Aisha. You captivated them. I knew you could do it. Thank you, Dr. Chun, she replied, a wide grin spreading across her face. I wasn't sure how it would go, but it felt right. Before they could continue their conversation, Dr. Blake and his team approached, their demeanor hostile. Aisha's stomach twisted as she recognized the tension in the air. Aisha, Dr. Blake began, his voice dripping with disdain. We need to talk. About what? Aisha replied, crossing her arms defensively. You mean about how you plan to present my work without my name attached? Don't play innocent, he shot back, his face flushed with anger. You've undermined the whole team by going rogue. I demand you retract your presentation. Aisha's heartbeat quickened, but she stood her ground. No, I won't be silenced any longer. This is my research, my discovery. I have every right to share it with the world. Is that so? Dr. Blake stepped closer, his voice lowering menacingly. You think you can just waltz in here and take credit for work that we all contributed to? Aisha looked him square in the eye, her resolve solidifying. You didn't contribute to this. You dismissed me at every turn. I did this on my own, and I will not retract anything. Mark my words, Aisha, Dr. Blake warned, his tone icy. This isn't over. You'll regret this. As he stormed away, Aisha felt a mix of exhilaration and fear. Her presentation had been a success, but she could already feel the repercussions of her defiance looming over her. Dr. Chen placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. You did the right thing, Aisha. Your work deserves to be recognized. Thank you, she murmured, though her mind was racing with thoughts of what would come next. Just then, a woman in a sharp suit approached her, a smile on her face that contrasted with the tension that hung in the air. Aisha Mitchell, she asked, extending her hand. I'm Lisa from Green Tech Innovations. I just heard your presentation, and I must say, I'm impressed. We're looking for groundbreaking research to fund, and your work fits perfectly with our mission. Aisha's heart soared at the unexpected opportunity. Really? You're interested in my research? Absolutely, Lisa replied, her eyes sparkling with possibility. Let's discuss how we can work together. I think we can really make an impact. As they exchanged contact information, Aisha felt a surge of confidence. Perhaps this was her chance to break free from the constraints of her current environment. But as she looked back at the backstage area, where Dr. Blake glared at her from a distance, she knew the battle was far from over. Aisha sat in her small, cluttered office, the glow of her laptop illuminating her determined expression. The recent media attention on her groundbreaking work had sent ripples through the scientific community, and now she had received an invitation to speak on a prominent science podcast. The email felt like a lifeline, affirming her resilience and the relevance of her research. She could already imagine the questions she would face on air. The thought of sharing her journey of perseverance, the challenges she had overcome, and the importance of representation in science excited her. Hey Aisha, you ready for your big debut? Maya poked her head through the door, a wide grin plastered on her face. Not yet. I'm still working on my notes, Aisha replied, her fingers dancing across the keyboard. But I'm excited. It feels like the first time I'm truly being heard. Maya walked in, leaning against the desk. You got to tell them about the systemic barriers you faced. People need to know how hard it is for women of color in science. Aisha nodded, her heart swelling with pride and purpose. I want to share that it's not just about my story, but the countless others who are sidelined and ignored. We need to break those barriers. As the podcast date approached, Aisha felt a mixture of excitement and anxiety. She rehearsed her speech in front of Maya, who provided feedback, helping her refine the message. Remember, you're not just representing yourself. You're giving a voice to many, Maya encouraged. The day of the podcast arrived, and Aisha was filled with trepidation as she entered the studio. The host, a well-known figure in the science podcasting world, greeted her warmly. Aisha, we're thrilled to have you here. Your recent presentation has sparked quite the conversation. Thank you for having me, Aisha said, taking a deep breath. It's an honor to share my work and experiences. As the interview progressed, Aisha spoke passionately about her research, her struggles for recognition, and the importance of diversity in STEM. For too long, the contributions of people like me have been overlooked. It's not just my fight. It's a collective struggle for visibility and respect in our fields. The host nodded, engaging with her thoughts. What advice do you have for young scientists facing similar challenges? Persistence is key, Aisha replied, her voice steady. Believe in your work, even when others don't. Surround yourself with supportive people, and don't be afraid to speak up. Your voice matters. After the episode aired, Aisha's phone buzzed incessantly with messages and notifications. She felt a rush of exhilaration as she read the comments. Many people were inspired by her story, sharing their own experiences of marginalization and encouragement. But amidst the excitement, she knew that not everyone was pleased. Back at the lab, Dr. Blake watched the podcast with a scowl etched on his face. He leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, as whispers of discontent spread among the team. This is ridiculous. She's getting too much attention for work that isn't even hers, he grumbled, casting a sidelong glance at his colleagues. Come on, Thomas, one of the junior researchers replied hesitantly. Her findings are groundbreaking. She deserves recognition. Don't be naive. She's just a flash in the pan. We'll see how long this lasts. Dr. Blake snapped, determined to undermine Aisha's hard-earned success. Despite the lurking shadows of envy, Aisha found herself buoyed by the growing support from her peers. They rallied around her, sharing her podcast episode on social media and defending her contributions in the lab. Maya was at the forefront, encouraging others to speak up. Don't let him get to you, Aisha, Maya said one evening as they walked out of the lab together. You're making waves. Let them try to spread rumors. The truth is on your side. Aisha smiled, grateful for her friend's unwavering support. I know. It's just hard to shake off the negativity sometimes. Just keep doing what you're doing. You're inspiring so many people. Focus on that, Maya encouraged. In the days that followed, Aisha received an unexpected call from a major energy company that had been following her research. They wanted to discuss a potential collaboration that could lead to a new project, one that would allow her to lead and innovate in an environment that valued her contributions. The thought of it filled her with hope and excitement, yet a pang of uncertainty gripped her heart. Could she leave her current team behind, especially when she had fought so hard to carve her space within it? The offer was tempting, a chance to finally prove her worth in a setting that recognized her brilliance. But would her departure be seen as defeat? As she pondered her options, a flicker of determination ignited within her. Whatever choice she made, she would not allow Dr. Blake or anyone else to define her worth. Aisha was on the brink of something monumental, and she was ready to embrace it, whatever the future held. Aisha sat in her dimly lit office, the glow of her computer screen illuminating the fury etched across her face. The report she had stumbled upon was like a punch to the gut. Dr. Blake's meticulously crafted plan detailed how he intended to present her research as his own at the upcoming Institute Symposium. She could hardly believe the lengths he was willing to go to undermine her. The betrayal felt like a heavy weight on her chest. but it also ignited a fierce determination within her. "Not this time," she muttered under her breath, her fingers flying over the keyboard as she began compiling evidence of Blake's deception. Each piece of documentation she uncovered felt like a small victory, a step closer to reclaiming her narrative. She saved every email, every draft, every piece of correspondence that proved Blake's intention to steal her work. As she worked, her resolve strengthened. This was not just about her research. It was about integrity, about standing up against a system that had tried to silence her for too long. The following day, Aisha walked into the boardroom with a calm exterior, but inside, her heart raced. She was about to confront one of the most powerful figures in the Institute, a man who had consistently belittled her contributions. As she took her seat at the long, polished table, the board members filed in, their expressions a mix of curiosity and skepticism. Dr. Blake entered last, a confident smile on his face that made Aisha's blood boil. "Thank you all for being here," Aisha began, her voice steady despite the nerves prickling at her fingertips. "I have something important to discuss regarding my research and Dr. Blake's recent actions." She glanced at Blake, who shifted in his seat, his smile faltering. "I've obtained evidence that Dr. Blake intends to present my work as his own." A murmur swept through the room. Aisha pressed on, her confidence growing with each word. "In the past few weeks, I've gathered emails and drafts that clearly show his intent to misappropriate my research. This is not just unethical. It's a violation of our institute's integrity." Dr. Blake interjected, his voice dripping with feigned innocence. "Aisha, this is preposterous. I have never claimed your work as my own. This is nothing more than a desperate attempt to tarnish my reputation." But before he could continue, Aisha placed a stack of printed documents on the table, her heart pounding. "These are a compilation of your emails, Dr. Blake. In them, you outline your plans to present my findings without any acknowledgement of my contributions." She looked around the room, meeting the eyes of the board members, who were now fully engaged. "I urge you to consider the ethical implications of this situation." The board chair, a stern woman with silver hair, leaned forward. "Dr. Mitchell, we take these allegations very seriously. If this is true, it not only undermines your work, but also the integrity of this institute." Aisha felt a rush of relief as the board members began to scrutinize the documents, their expressions shifting from skepticism to disbelief. Dr. Blake's face drained of color as the reality of his actions sunk in. After a tense silence, the chairwoman addressed Blake directly. "Dr. Blake, we need to investigate these claims thoroughly. For the time being, you are suspended pending further review." As Blake's face twisted in anger and disbelief, Aisha felt a wave of triumph wash over her. She had not only defended her work, but had also exposed the corrupt practices that had plagued her career. The moment felt surreal, like stepping out of the shadows and into the light. With Blake ousted, Aisha finally had the opportunity to lead her project, a chance to explore her groundbreaking research without fear of being undermined. The support from her colleagues, who had previously been silent, began to surface. They rallied around her, eager to contribute to her work and ensure it received the recognition it deserved. Standing at the forefront of her research, Aisha reflected on her journey. The struggles she had faced were not merely obstacles. They had shaped her into a resilient leader. She had learned to use her voice, to fight for herself, and most importantly, to advocate for others who felt marginalized like she once had. "I won't just stop here," she vowed quietly, determination etched on her face. "I will be a mentor for those facing similar challenges." Aisha felt a renewed sense of purpose, ready to not only advance her field, but also to pave the way for others who would come after her. In that moment, she knew she had broken barriers, not just for herself, but for all the voices that had been silenced before her.